Hi, my friend. So fun to be with you.
You too.
I want everyone to know that today I am talking to Barry Lerner Grant. And Barry and I met a number of years ago through a mutual friend and yoga teacher, Amy Owen. We met at Yoga View. And you attended one of my workshops that I did with Amy
I
years
sure did.
ago. And then we've just been sort of like slowly getting to know each other. And the more time I get to spend with Barry, the larger my heart grows. And you are such a warrior for love. And look at your t-shirt, your sweatshirt. Where
Yep.
is the love?
There's-
And you and I have crossed paths in so many different ways, but I'm here to talk about conscious parenting and mothering and nurturing and what that all means. And you have an incredibly beautiful story that I would love for you to share that has led you to this title. You have this title that I want you to share with everyone who's listening in. What do you call yourself?
After many years of being very hard on myself about having lost my mother and never wanting to define myself by my grief, my mother Ellen died in 1993. I am now the chief grief officer of the Memory Circle, a circle that I created for those who had experienced loss.
And particularly loss around mothers. That's how it started, if I remember correctly.
That is how it started, and the circle grew, and the
Yeah.
circle grew. It was very much something on the side that I felt, if this is hard for me, like other things, if this is hard for me, motherhood, divorce, anything I've been through that I feel has been a hardship on me, and I can help anybody along and make the path a little bit easier. I've always been that girl. And so for a long time, it was the motherless daughter that I would meet wherever I would go. It was like the universe was not just tapping on my shoulder. It was like plowing me over. Like, don't you know that this is the path? And I couldn't see it because I felt so much that it was a betrayal to my mother's legacy to step into a place of defining myself by her loss. Like being the sad girl, and somehow I made that up, because fast forward and I've seen mediums and shaman, and mom is cheerleading. She's like right here, and this is my life's work. I've never felt so on purpose. I always tell people I sit taller now that I'm in like the right seat.
I love that. Well, one of the things that I love is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a way in which you're celebrating grieving. We like put grieving in a box or make it bad, or there's something wrong, or we shouldn't be, or you'll get over it soon, or whatever that is.
Lots of shame around grieving out loud. Lots of shame. We've been told for years, especially in 1993, when I experienced my loss and a sudden loss, which was also pretty traumatic. We went back to work. We went back to normal. And then there was not much support. Nobody really used the words around it to heal in any way. Unless you actually could not function, could not move forward. And I had a public relations firm. My sister worked in Denver. She returned to her work. And my stepfather was an attorney. We just all house emptied of all people, and we just kept going. And it wasn't until a friend experienced a really traumatic loss that I was there for him and felt that I was a terrible friend, because all of I call it re-grief, all of my grief that I had not processed came flooding. And it was then that I really took a very, very, very deep look at what I had dealt with and not dealt with, and a more of a realization that the entire world was very quiet about this topic that was going to come for all of us at one time or another.
Yeah. Why can't we just grieve more honestly, because, there's such love in grieving.
That's what it is. I mean, we really grieve what we hoped the future would hold, whether it is the loss of a loved one or the loss of the normalcy during COVID, like whatever that is. I believe that we need to be able to name it, then be witnessed in it, and then process. Because when we don't name it grief and we don't fully step into moving it through us, then it gets stuck like anything else. And we need to work through it. I think it companions us. I feel like it's like a backpack, a silent backpack that most of us are wearing through life. We're all carrying something. And so this is the way that I move through, like you said, the way that I seemingly celebrate it, and that it doesn't have to be debilitatingly sad, is what are some ways that we can move through it that feel good in your body, in your mind, in your heart, in your soul, in your memories? Like, how can we do this so that it doesn't take us down, right? And we can be both things at once, which I think is true for so many of the things that we need to move forward with. How can we take away the shame and live with it in a way that feels authentic?
Yeah, I think as mothers, it's probably, you just named the thing that I think is the most important thing we can be teaching our children as we're navigating. So you have two children, I have 3 plus 6 stepchildren. And we're like in this role, we're in this leadership role. We're like showing them the way to be with life as it's occurring. And I love the model of this idea of both and, that grief is possible and I can still hold joy, love,
happiness,
abundance,
love, all of it. And every single time I write a condolence note to someone who's a grown up that has children, I say, this is an opportunity for you to show your children, to model for your children what loss looks like. Yeah. Tears are okay. Being sad is okay. Telling beautiful stories is okay. You don't need to hide your sadness. Like you can't make someone more sad about their loss. I promise. They're sad, right?
And sadness is okay.
It's okay.
It's a human experience.
Yes, people apologize to me for tears. People apologize when they get choked up talking about a loved one. One of the things that I have also integrated into practice is say their name. That's the other thing. I had a woman in circle who, for the very first time, she told me in like something like 26 years, spoke her husband's name into circle when we were at an event. And it took me out. Like, it really took me out. Like, her family was very move on and she really wanted to honor him. So my mother never knew my girls, but I've always called her Grandma Ellen.
Yeah.
And that's how I honor her to them. This is a Grandma Ellen recipe. Grandma Ellen loved that. I grew up with this song. Oh, this is Grandma Ellen's favorite when a radio, song comes on. That was her favorite color. She was a beautiful realtor. I used to say, I sort of got my interiors love on by, spying into open houses with my mom. Like, I have so many Grandma Ellen stories that, especially my eldest, Emma, who's named for her, has said to me, I feel like I know her. And that's the greatest gift.
I was just going to say, you gave her a gift.
Yeah. Because
she does know her through you. Mm-hmm. And probably, I imagine, all the best parts, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I did, writing has been extraordinarily cathartic for me. It's something that I did for most of my work life and never did for any of my grieving until I came upon a book that I was, when I was becoming certified as a grief coach, I came upon a book, and it was an exercise, probably much like you do with parenting, where we're always, getting new resources and opening up to new science. And so I was reading about all the science of how delicious it is to use our hand to process, that there's a different part of our brain that we use when we process, and it actually responds in healing. And so I was like, I love this. I've never written to my mother. I did this exercise and was completely moved and changed.
Wow.
And so I use the exercise with clients now and over again for myself, because I feel it's a modality, first of all, that's lost, writing by hand, unless you're
Yes.
a big journaler. But it's a beautiful practice for bringing them into events where they are not present. Like, instead of the woe is me, it's the mom, if you could see Emma at her graduation, if you could see Quinn getting into college, if you know, all of that is so present, and in a story that you help rewrite, that you bring their aliveness and them into your story moving forward. And it's, the body doesn't know whether they're earthly or otherwise. The cells in your body have no idea. So when we write to them, when we ask for their guidance, they're right there. And when you do write something down on the page, I always tell people, you can like almost take that notebook, put it down, the words that you've written down, and it's like sitting down next to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You've taken that and you've moved it from the inside out. And how beautiful a way to do that, to move emotion, to move story, whatever that is that's on the inside. I feel like if we don't move it, it's like that snow globe that just settles. And and think about that silt and soot and like whatever that we don't move.
The residue. Residue.
Yes. So I call it like waking and writing, this practice that I use called morning pages, that was made famous, of course, by Julia Cameron. I use that practice, and I always say it's the Windex of the day. You know, you get to clean the soot and get it all on paper, and then you can move on with the rest of the day.
I describe it like recycling, like I'm cleaning my closet of my consciousness, you know, so it gets it all out, because it gets stuck in there, and then I can't see, you know, I don't know what I'm picking out the next day. So
what am I going to wear today? Yeah.
All right. So you can't leave us hanging. I want you to introduce us to Grandma Ellen. Tell us about your mom and her journey, if you would.
Sure. My mother, Ellen Jane, was a pip for sure. She had grew up in New Jersey, right by the shore, was an epic swimmer and diver and counselor, and I think consummate camper. We went to her summer camp many, many years later. She was the first to ever, of all the friends, divorce. I think she was like a thoroughly modern Millie before her time. She wanted more. She remained very, very close to my father.
How old were you?
I was in fourth grade. I was 10.
It's hard.
And the one thing that was magical that she shared with my sister and I was that she feared for the girls that we would become had she not left.
Mm-hmm. I get that.
And that felt so empowering. That felt really empowering. Like, I'm going to be something more. And it wasn't, she was a magical mother. So I never felt like it was more than a mom, that she was belittling that, but she had something inside of her. And so she went and got her real estate license with a best friend, her friend Joni, who also, after my mom announced, you know, her feelings on the inside about her marriage, Joni did the same thing. And
wow.
Right, powerful. And they became what the local paper called the dynamic duo. They created job share, as far as I'm concerned. They went to get their, hang their license somewhere, and they decided we'd have one desk, one business card, one would watch the kids, and one would work. Eventually we grew old enough to care for ourselves after school. And my mother became the talk of the town in real estate. Like, if you needed a house, she was it. And then we would learn story after story from her customers who would refer her, that she was so much more beyond their realtor, that a woman who also was buying her first home, that had gone through a divorce, my mom, they were sitting in the car and my mom put the mirror down and whipped out her red lipstick and said, this is how you wear lipstick, and encouraged her to date. And so there was so much more, there was so much more. She loved putting people like in their home, in their right place, because she really believed that like the home was like the center of all joy and happiness, that gathering. And she did it her way too. Like she never, it was eclectic to say the least, the way that her style was in the house. But she was also an Olympic discount shopper and super, super well dressed, and taught my sister and I all about that. And was so well known for the way that her style struck others. And I'll forever remember her that way. So stylish, so elegant. And yet I don't know that she knew that about herself. And so while she was our greatest cheerleader, it was really interesting to grow up with a mom who people saw in such a magical way. And I'm still not sure to this day she could ever see that as a believing mirror.
Do you think that she became truer to her highest self because she left that marriage?
Yes, I know
She was freer.
Yeah, I know she did.
That's beautiful.
I know she did. And I know that it was because of getting married very young that she and my dad grew to want different things in life. But she loved him very much and he loved her very much. And she remained very close to his second wife. And they did a lot of work together, which was really like a beautiful reflection, even of how, way before Gwyneth Paltrow was announcing how to consciously uncouple, my mother was doing it. My mom was doing it in a way that was really beautiful.
And so tell us about when she left.
Yeah. It was an interesting day because I feel like we were all in our places. She had scalped. That's okay.
Yeah.
I feel like we were all in our places that day because she had scalped tickets to the US Open golf tournament for my stepfather. She had seen come to my apartment in Manhattan and had a meal with me. And
so how old are you at this time in your life?
28. And she said, as we finished dinner in the city, this is the best pasta I've ever had in my whole life. And I'm so glad that I remember that because it really struck me. I felt very proud to be out with her, showing her my city, my home, my new place. And she knew I had my own public relations firm and she was so proud. And we went to like the corner store and got like the frozen yogurt and every topping you could have. And she came and saw my home and my decorating. And it was just like an epic night of girly sleepover in my apartment. My husband at the time had been out of town. And my sister, she had just tucked into a new apartment in Denver at a job where my sister was like plucked from college to go work in this epic job as a comptroller right out of college. So she called me and said, it's too hot, expletive hot, to sell anyone house today. She had a real sailor mouth. I've learned my love of bad words from my mom for sure.
Oh, I've got it too.
And she spent the day at the beach. She had a receipt for 3 pounds of Santa Rosa plums in her beach bag, which were her favorite ever. The ones that are so super dark on the inside, they're almost black. She had a trashy novel because she was always left her good books at home, and a magazine because of the way she was such a quick reader, like a magazine would be like a nothing. And she went to a beach that was not like the beach where we would usually go. It was just a very private, so she didn't run into anybody that she knew, like a real day off, Sandy Hook Beach. And the sun set in her favorite place on earth. And there was another couple on the beach that was leaving and they didn't want to leave her sleeping. And when this woman tapped her, she was also a nurse. And she realized that my mom had some kind of an episode, which ended up being an aneurysm, and just fell asleep beautifully in her beach chair. She would have written it. She would have written it if given a choice, I really believe. And for all of us, my goodness, you know, we were promised there was no suffering, that it was just sleep, and that it was very instant. And she had wanted her organs donated. And I think this is the most magical part of her story, truly, is that we found out the following holiday season from my stepfather, who wondered whether or not he should share this piece with us, that when they went to donate her organs, they found early stage liver cancer.
Oh, wow.
That she couldn't
Wow.
have known about until the organs were out of her body. And I questioned how a woman so unbelievable and charitable and such a great mom with so much more to do on the planet could go at 50. And I feel like that gave me a really beautiful answer. That suffering to me would have been so not her. That wasn't her story to me. It's really how I find peace in her leaving the planet at 50.
So what was the grieving like for you? Like, you were at the stage of life, 28 years old, you're married, you've got a business, you're living life, and your vision is, I'm going to share this next part of the journey of my life with my mother. And I'm going to
finally, as more of as what I see with my eldest now, as like this friend where you come all the way around, and that's what that evening encapsulates for me, of us kind of palling around Manhattan. It was the beginning of that.
Yeah.
And I find it very difficult to look back on now, because I realize in all of my searching and learning about grief that I missed out on all the mothering that was left for me, even though I had separated from her and was feeling as if was mothering myself.
Yeah.
And then I never allowed that into friendships. And I think I've shared that with you before, that there's been so much lost in holding on to her memory in a way of honoring her by not allowing myself to be mothered, and also in my grief, learning to be epically resilient and independent.
Yes. We do this because we think that's sort of a sign of strength or power.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that you've come full circle now and seen how grieving is actually a strength, how when we grieve, that is epic. And can we really give one another permission to hold space? Because you and I both know this, we've talked about this before, like, nurturing is our nature. We are mothering one another all the time. And there's no more beautiful relationship than, giving birth to a human and having the opportunity to like walk side by side with that person. Like, just now, my daughter Alyssa's home from college, and she's downstairs and she's like under the covers reading a book, and it's so sweet. And I was like, oh, like in a few weeks you're leaving again. And I said, is there anything I could do for you? She's like, well, I'd really love some tea. And I was like, all right, I'm going to make you some tea. And she bought me a teapot with a little cup for Christmas 2 years ago. And I put it in there and I made her this little pretty tea thing. And I thought, oh, like, wow, this is like a moment where I get to nurture my daughter, my almost 21-year-old daughter. And again, and it felt like a gift for me.
Yes, I feel that.
And she goes, and she loves it. Like, what I love about her is that she's like, I love being mommied. I love being taken care of. And I love that she loves it. But and she's also fiercely independent, right? So I don't, I don't know. There's so many things that I want to say about like all the missed moments you had with your mother at that time, because you were 28, is that right?
Especially having a child. Like I said, she never knew my kids. So having Emma, wow, that's when it really hit me the first time. I am an older sister to my sister, Dana. She's 5 years younger. so as an older sister showing up for her, she flew to Chicago. I helped her with her wedding dress. I helped her with her wedding. Like, it was, of course, horribly sad that my mother wasn't present at her wedding, but I was there when she had her baby. I woke up in the night and for the nursing and all of that. And so what was missing for me when I had a mother, as delicious as it was, that I had a girl and I could again have that mother-daughter bond. When they asked me if I wanted to know the sex of the baby, I said, if they're a spirit or higher power or whatever the heck you believe in, this is a girl. There is a girl in here. And she said, it's a girl. It's a girl. I don't know how you were so sure, but it's a girl. And I was like, yeah, that's what I deserve, because that's what I deserve. And I was desperate without her. I had to lean on a lot of instinct, believe that I knew that I had inside of me what it would take. But I also had to ask a lot of people for advice and guidance. I borrowed a lot of people's mothers. Like even when we would sit at like a little class, like a sing and dance class, and they would ask how my child was, I was like, I don't even know if they realized it, but I was really like, I'm borrowing your mother right now. Like it was so delicious for somebody to ask me something about my child and be able to brag a bit or just take that in. To this day, that happens. It's really lovely. But I'm more aware now than I was back then. But I did see a therapist then, and it was lovely to be able to tell her stories about my mother. And it brought my mother into the sessions, but it also brought my mother into my life in a way that didn't feel like she was really as gone as I perceived. I also made up that she would be some kind of fairy princess grandmother and would swoop in and take the child who was crying from 4 to 7 each evening and be magical. And my brilliant therapist, Bonnie, turned to me and said, from what you've told me, I think Ellen may be on a vacation, doing her thing, enjoying her retirement or her days off, and might say to you, I did it, you can do it, buck up. And it was in that moment that I thought, she is so right. She is so right. Like my mother would probably have been like a gorgeous grandmother, but the coming and going would have been on her terms. She wasn't sweeping in to rescue me. I made all of that up, like, oh, if she were just here, this would be the truth of what is. And it wasn't. And in turn, that really didn't make me feel any better about the situation that I was in.
Well, of course, because I mean, my mother was it continues to be so available for me and my grandchildren. My parents are incredibly supportive, and I've considered that an immense gift in my life. And, everyone has their own unique style. That's what my mother lives for her grandchildren. And, they have 15 grandchildren, and that's what they spend their time and moments doing. I want to know, like, what do you think the greatest legacy of your mother that lives through you is?
My motherhood, 100%. I got an email when I returned from New York on a trip back to Chicago, and I will never forget this. I was like turning the bend where you can see the Ferris wheel, and it said, "You are the best." It was on Mother's Day, and it said, "You are the best mother I know."
Wow.
And it was from someone, a friend who I admire so much, that he also once joked that I said that someone was strange with their kids. I said, she's nice, but she's strange with her kids. And he said, that's the most horrible thing I've ever heard you say about anybody. And it was so funny. But the note reminded me that I am who I am because of who she was. Like, she lives in me and through me. And it is only because the rich lessons, even in that short life, that I really know how to show up as a mom that I'm very, very proud of. Very proud
Yeah.
of my girls. I would say the biggest lesson also is that she was so proud of me that I did not learn to be proud of myself in her absence. It's taken a lot of work, a lot of work. My gift for my girls is to allow them to be proud of themselves in the big moments. Like I say, I'm always proud of you, but I want you to be proud of you.
Mm.
And so I would say that's also a legacy, even though it seems to be something that's lacking. It's a lesson that I want so much for them. And like I said to you before, I don't know that my mom truly believed. Do any of us believe the way others see us? I wonder. I've always felt that there's a part of me that's still a child. Like when I ask even someone my very own age, something, there's like still like a little bit of child. Some questions I've
Seeking.
not been able to ask my mother, that there's a girl that's seeking that approval or that mothering in a friend that I really only have allowed in the last couple of years. And it's
Thank you for doing that.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing. I mean, I see that in you when I'm with you. I see that when I'm with Amy. I see that in our mutual friend, Kathy. Like, I really saddled up to it because I've realized that it is not a weakness. It's a beautiful, empowering, it's just helped me in infinite ways. And in many topics that like child rearing and menopause and like a lot of those other topics that we don't talk about because they sadly have grown in some shame box for some insane reason that we're not doing it perfectly, right?
Yeah. And
So the more I
authentically,
share, yes,
authentically is perfectly. And I think
yes,
that's what this legacy of grieving so authentically means to me for you, because in doing so, when you show up authentically, like your mother did for, what's her friend's name? Joni?
Joni.
When your
Yeah.
mom showed up, this happened for me too. When I was going through my divorce, I was sort of in the closet about it for a long time. And then when I started speaking the truth, like I'm going through this divorce, all of a sudden others started showing up.
Me too. People also said, I can now see myself on the other side of this because I see you. And I feel like
Yes.
that's the same way that I step into the grief space. That if
Yes.
people see me on the other side, look, mine is 1993 is pretty far in my rearview mirror. I continue to grieve in my own way today, but I teach everybody what I've learned along the way authentically.
Yeah.
And I don't really have any, a little expert here, a little expert there. Like we all, like continuing ed, we all make our own syllabus as we move through whatever we're teaching others. But I feel that's where mine comes from. And sometimes it's just like the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed by leaning into what I feel is authentic. And then someone will say, that's science. And I'm always like, I'm so delighted. Like
Yeah.
it's so magical, right? Because you're like, no wonder like that feels good because there's science behind that. No wonder writing feels good. Like it's just beautiful. And that's where I come from. Like I feel like the sharing came out of almost like a childhood wound of losing her, even in my 20s, where you think you're older, but you have so much more mothering to
Yes.
learn and earn, right? And gain. And to see what you will look like and be like as an older woman. I don't have any of that. And so I think at this time in my life, when I've started to ask others about, I've started to receive wholeheartedly the mothering and sistering that comes along with that.
You know, I would say the moment we become pregnant, if we bear our own children, or even if there's other ways our children come into our lives, but the moment we decide to become a parent is the moment we start on this grieving journey, right? Because parenting is just a series of moments of letting go.
Yes.
Constantly. And it can happen in big and small ways, right? Like, you know, the very first time they started, oh, like I could feel tears coming to my eyes as I think about it. Like the very first time they let go of your finger and they start walking, and there's this like mutual joy. And then same time, like, oh, they're starting to leave the nest.
And it's that 100 times. It's that
a million times.
Exactly. Over and over and over. And the comings and the goings. And then in a divorce too, in the sharing with another parent, you know, it's on and endless. And yet it's what you wish for them, right? It's that resiliency and that independence that you wish for them. But now I so lean into back to where we were, that both can be true. I can mother you and you can also be independent, and I can also be on adventures with you.
Yes.
And be your mother. You know, I've also, people have asked me about how you parent, and I say, you know, I feel like it's a whole lot of exposing them to the world, but it's almost like a ring of bumper cars. You know, I grew up near the Jersey Shore, so to me, it's all like a ride and a boardwalk and the beach. So most of what I imagine is like that ride at the boardwalk for me that I grew up with, and like my girls are in these bumper cars, and they get to just bound around in there and find their way, and they'll bump up against something, but they'll work it out. And if they really can't work it out, I'm here. They know that.
Yeah, that's just so beautiful.
But I've just exposed like this is what you get. You know, you can try all of these things that I've tried to impart like those lessons, like never tweeze your eyebrows, or never, like all of these things that are like, you know, mistakes I've made along the way. And I've also just given up and given in to like them having to figure that all out on their own.
And then be there for when they figure it out and it didn't turn out exactly the way they wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Every now and again, you might have been right about that.
Yeah. You know, I hate to admit it, but I am one of those parents who's like, when they come to me and go, I hate to admit it, Mom, but you were right. I do this little happy dance inside.
I ditto.
But also
because you too were doing your best in trying to impart that advice. And so it's a push-pull of, am I doing right by getting ahead of them with the lesson?
Yes,
you know,
always,
like
always.
Hurt by the friend, like I try to do that, but really, isn't that their own path? Isn't that their own road? Isn't that like, I have to remember that's their journey. This is not my journey.
And I mean, it's such a hard thing to remember.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. I have made that mistake so many times, and I've seen, particularly with my 23-year-old son, because he's the oldest, right? And you want to get it right, and you're like doing all the things, and how much I've interfered with his own process. And what I believe has happened is it's actually held him back rather than catapulted him forward, because at every turn I was like, no, go this way. No, try that. You know, because I see it. I know better. And actually I don't know better.
I call that to this day, I call that the $10,000 cartwheel, because I grew up as a gymnast, and I immediately, the minute Emma was ready to sign up for class, signed her up for gymnastics. And she was so happy to try new things. She's like the try anything, work hard kind of girl, right? All the girls were like moving up, moving on. And Emma was back with like the little ones who were just starting out. And so I used to call it the $10,000 cartwheel. Like I was waiting around. And one of the teachers came over to me and was like, maybe she'd be better at something else. And I was like, they're not us. They are not us. It was like a beautiful lesson in that. And then I avoided with Quinn ever exploring gymnastics. And at 9, she decided on the playground, after doing like flips and tricks on like the public school playground, like I would really like to take class. And I was like, okay, you're going to have to start, start at the bottom with like the little ones, whatever. And she said, yeah, I'm going to be on the team. And damn if she wasn't. Like she really. So I always think of those two stories of like the $10,000 cartwheel and the one that wanted to decide to do it on her own, even though it wasn't the 3-year-old, start that all of my gymnastics heroes had. And what was right for me is not always going to be right for my girls. And that's, you teach from where you know, right? That's how it goes. But now I learned so much from them in making those mistakes.
Well, I would say that the greatest lesson I've learned as a parent so far, and I imagine there's many more to come as long as I'm on the planet, is trusting them, is really trusting them in their journey. And in that example, I was just saying, I mean, your example was beautiful. Like, Quinn led you to what was true for her. And when we have an agenda for our kids that is not necessarily aligned with who they are or what's right for them in any given moment, we've got to trust them to lead us. And then we become sort of the bumper cars, like you said, like we hold the space for them, but we let them lead the way.
My fear was, crap, she has a dream of being on the team. She's joining at 9. And if that dream's not fulfilled, I don't want her to be crushed.
Yeah.
Right. So isn't that at every turn, we just don't want them to be sad or crushed or hurt or, that's been me their whole lives. You wish for your children to be happy. And just like anything else, and especially in grief, we can witness, we can't fix, we cannot always fix. We just need to consciously listen and show up for them and just witness. Yeah, that really stinks. That's really awful. That really sucks.
And they need to experience grief. They need to experience heartache. It's part of being human. And I was just thinking as you were speaking, this beautiful gift your mom gave you, choosing to leave the planet when she chose, because I do believe that we make a choice on some level. She chose. And you said you've never felt more on purpose or aligned in this now moment. And she gave you that gift, like, okay, I trust you can bear this. I trust you can hold this with love. You'll get there. I don't know when you'll get there, but you'll get there. And I'm going to give you this
I also
gift.
think she would have said, even though it was 50 short years, was an epic enough mother that you've got what you need.
You got everything you need.
I can hear that. Like, I can hear that from her. Like, you've got this because I gave you all of that in that short of a time. And I know how lucky I was to have even had the kind of relationship that I had with her and that my sister had with her. Like, when people started to fill our house and tell us about their experiences with her, we're like, well, wait a minute, there's only 24 hours in a day. And she talked to us both every day and was there for us every day and imparted this and this and this on us every day. Like, how is it that she was showing up? Like, are there more than one of her? Like that's almost how it felt, because she had touched so many. And we continue to get those stories. Someone just asked the other day, I was on a call with Motherless Daughters author Hope Edelman, and we were talking about how we can connect with our mother's story if our mother is no longer here. And I discovered recently that someone here in Chicago is mother went to camp with my mother. And I got to hear a story that I never would have known about her as a young woman, as a camper. And it's just like the gift that keeps giving if you are open to receiving, to tap into those people who knew her and take in those stories. Like, it just keeps getting better. Like, you find a picture that you've never seen of her or whatever that is. And I'm so open to that. And that's really why I called it the memory circle, which just sort of came out of the keys for me. It wasn't a giant search or anything. It's like keeping memory alive has been part of my journey. That's how I've defined. And my mom had very little, when you talk about cleaning the closets, I mean, my mother had so little that was stuff. She was such a doer and a goer. We were last at the mall. The car was always on E. We were always in need of gas because she was like, lean forward, girls, we're running on luck, because we didn't have time. We didn't have time. It was like she knew we were running on low on time. You know, she was soaking it in. And there was, you can have a Carvel ice cream cone for supper because why not? You know, that was her.
Carpe diem.
Right. That was her. And and part of it was working mother, like being last at the mall to me was like magical. Being last at the mall to a working mom in retrospect was like, this is how I'm going to squeeze this in after I've shown 20 houses today and been working. You need that prom dress or that green t-shirt for green day at school. Like, this is the only way it's going to get done is right now as the mall is closing and we're grabbing like a funny snack. Like we used to have hors d'oeuvre night. And that was really like exhausted working mom who didn't want to get dinner together. And to me, it was the magic of my mother. So also you may feel in some of those moments that you're failing your children, but really when I think of like hors d'oeuvre night, I can't even tell you how magical that lives in my memory and how long it took me to realize that she was just really too busy, that we didn't really have anything in the house to make a proper dinner, or that she was just too damn tired because she was so busy as a single mom. And so it all comes around in such beautiful ways if you let it be. Like that which is right is unfolding. You know, I really have to believe that to be true. That's like my new learned experience from Kathy Bressler at Alter. Like that is really what I have leaned into in the last couple of years, because it's all becoming so true, right in front of me. It's all unfolding.
Well, I love you dearly, and this time together has been so fun. And one of the things that you said just a few minutes ago is it's all there for you. I'm not quoting you exactly, but if you're open to receiving. And I think that for anyone who's listening in, I really want you to absorb what Barri just said about that, because everything is available to us when we are open to receiving, and we can choose to be open or we can choose to be closed. And really, when we're open, really just means our hearts are open. And Barri, you so lead with an open heart. You so mother with an open heart. Your daughters are so beyond blessed to have you as their guide. And I see the impact that your mother has had on you and the impact that you're having on them and the impact that they will have on whatever it is they do in the world, right? Like, it's not even just about mothering. It's about whoever they touch in the world with their open heart. So
that reflection makes me feel so much more whole than broken, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of us can look at our lives without a mother or without a loved one that we grew up with as broken. And so that reflection, I thank you for that. I'm really leaning into that because that makes me feel so whole.
Yeah.
Like there's not a part of me that's missing. There's just a beautiful part of me that goes on and on and
goes on and on. And your daughters have
I've learned so much from you too. So I appreciate like showing up, listening to you, and showing up in parenting classes when it was like to support a girlfriend and leaving with like epic amounts of good juicy stuff and full body yeses and all the goodness that you've taught me as well. I think we also have to be open to the learning and then not always having to be on this journey by ourselves.
It takes a village, and I know that's cliche, but you know better than anyone, like it takes a village. And you're an incredible mirror for other women who are grieving, mothering, and just being human. And most importantly, for your daughters who get to see the light that you are, and then see that as the potential for themselves. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. Tell people real quick where they should find you, should they want to know more.
Yes, sure. TheMemoryCircle.com has everywhere I am. I'm also at the Memory Circle on Clubhouse, which has like 5,000 people who we meet on this beautiful audio app, which is amazing. And I think a real reflection of how people are showing up for themselves in grief these days.
Yeah.
My hope is that we change the vernacular, that grief with a capital G can be celebrated, and that my mom's wish through the shaman was don't make it sad. And I think it's beautiful that that comes through for you in my work. And so, seeing everybody at the Memory Circle, however you define your grief, whatever you feel loss is in your own very own definition, I'm here.
You know what I just heard you say? I'm giggling on the inside. I heard you say grief is Buddhaful. And I love that. I was like spelling it in my head. Buddhaful. That's awesome. I love it.
All right.
Love you, Dad, madly. You too.
You too.